What was your biggest "we need to leave now" moment? Was 15/16 at a house party with my good friend, another girl. There were some gatecrashers who turned up, which weren't unusual at London house parties, but these guys were older, and it was just a vibe. A girl I vaguely knew was very drunk in being surrounded by them, and I asked her if she was okay, and she told me to fuck off, I'm fine. I looked at my friend and said to her, I'm gonna call my mom and dad to come get me, do you want a lift? My parents were always amazing and said to me that if I was at a party or out and for any reason didn't want to be where I was, I could call them and they would come and get me. My parents turned up, coats on over pajamas, and took us both home. Apparently, half an hour after we left, someone was stabbed. The girl we had asked earlier was sexually assaulted, and lots of stuff was stolen and people beaten up and held up at knife point. I had such a feel in the air that I've hardly felt before or since, and knew we needed to not be there. I posted this in a similar one of these threads a couple of months ago, but I'll paste it over here. I used to drive for Lyft. April 2018, I picked up a young couple from a bar at about 1:30 a.m. They were fairly chill, and I figured it would be my last ride of the night. The dude asked me to stop at a corner store on the way to their destination so that he could get cigarettes. I didn't see any harm in waiting, so I stopped and had a nice chat with the young woman while he was in the store. He ended up being about 5 minutes since everyone was trying to get their PRE 2 a.m. beer. When he came out, he asked me to take him to a location that was in the opposite direction of their destination, but was only about a mile away. He said he wanted to meet some friends real quick and grab some beer. Since I figured it would be my last ride of the night, I said fuck it, why not, and drive him over there. Now, I know the town we live in fairly well, but the direction that we were coming from was not a way I was used to going when I would go to this location. So when I turned onto the destination street, I missed the turn into the complex parking lot. I just came to a complete stop since the roads were empty and asked them if they just wanted me to park on the street or pull into the complex. This is when the two of them started arguing, as he suddenly wanted to go in and hang out for a few minutes while she didn't want to go in at all. She just wanted him to do his thing and get out of there so they could go home. And then something hit my car. The sound is unmistakable to me, so I immediately started to look around to figure out what it was. But there were no other cars on the road, so that couldn't have been it. Then I moved to the next thing on my mental checklist. If something didn't hit me, then what did I hit? But that didn't make any sense either, as I'd been in park and couldn't have hit anything. It's at this point that the young lady's attitude completely changed. She just kinda looked around and then said, "Can we just get out of here? It hurts and I want to go home." This was odd to me, as she'd been sitting in my car for about 10 minutes at this point and hadn't said a word about any kind of pain. She followed this up with, "It hurts and I can't move," put her hat to her back and pulled it out covered in blood. So the guy starts freaking out, thinking that something in my trunk had exploded, but it was empty. As he reached over to tend to her, I noticed something white sticking out of the seat. This hadn't been there at the beginning of the night, so I asked him what it was. He pulled on it. It was a piece of the filler fuzz from my seat. It came out of the hole that had been made in the seat. Because she'd been shot. As soon as he grabbed that fuzz, we both had the same realization. He slammed shut his door, and I drove them straight to the hospital, which was only a couple of miles away. That realization and the follow-up realization of, oh, someone could still shoot you while you're sitting here, was one of the most terrifying things I'd ever experienced. When I was 15, a friend and I went for a lot of walks around town. Small town, around 5 to 6K people. We were going to the cyber cafe in town to meet a few friends, and we often took different streets to get places, just to keep it interesting. We were about to go to Main Street off one of the side streets, and a man on a bicycle approached us. He got off his bike and asked us a couple small talk questions. Something didn't seem right about him. He was probably mid-40s. We both kept inching away but didn't want to come off as too rude, so we answered about the weather or traffic. Then he paused, and we said we had to go, and he said, and I'll never forget it, "You look so young, I don't want to get in trouble, but I need to touch someone. I just need to touch you. You should come with me." And he started rambling. I just felt terror, couldn't even speak. I grabbed my friend's hand and turned. We sprinted the rest of the way to the cafe, and as soon as we were inside, we asked to use the phone. I called my mom to pick us up while my friend told the worker what happened and what the guy looked like. A month later, I got my first cell phone. I was waiting for an Uber on the outskirts of Atlanta with a couple friends around 10 p.m. We were just shooting the shit after leaving a nearby restaurant and talking about what bar to go to. A disheveled older man walked up a few feet behind one of my friends and struck a weird pose for 2 to 3 minutes while looking in our direction, and there was no one else around. Then he walked off without saying a word. He came back a few minutes later and sat down on the sidewalk about 5 feet away from us. At this point, I'm just wondering if he wants something from us, because there was absolutely no other reason to plop down that close to us on an empty sidewalk. Then a small sedan pulls in a nearby parking lot, parking behind some bushes in the spot closest to us, and consequently furthest from any of the shops in that lot. I only noticed because I happened to be facing that direction, but then saw 6 guys pile out of the sedan and immediately cross the street directly towards us. I realized there were not any shops or restaurants still open nearby. It suddenly occurred to me that the strange dude might have been sizing us up when he was watching us earlier, and he came back to mark us. We were all dressed nice with smartphones out and watches visible, basically the fanciest stuff we had for a night out. Right as I started to speak up that we should head back towards other people, our Uber pulled up to the curb. As we drove away, I watched those 6 guys talking in a circle where we had just been standing, and then they crossed the street again and got back in their car. I'll never have a definitive answer, but I'm pretty sure we were 10 seconds away from some unfortunate shenanigans. About 2 months ago, I'd stayed up past my usual bedtime, and as soon as I got in bed, I smelled something odd and was hearing some inconsistent banging and clattering from downstairs. I don't live in a great neighborhood, so none of this was unusual, but I got out of bed to check anyway and saw flames licking up the side of the building. Yelled at my wife to get out of bed and threw on some clothes, and we hightailed it out. Our building has a shared wall with the next, and that one had an apartment on the ground floor fully engulfed by the time we made it outside, ended up condemning the whole building. I was the first one to call 911. Have been jerking myself awake in the night pretty consistently since then. A couple of friends and I were outside a house party talking. I noticed out of the corner of my eye something dark behind some bushes towards the end of the block, maybe 4 houses down. It was dark out, so it was hard to tell. We stood there a bit long, and I swore I saw something again move to a tree a little closer. This wasn't the best neighborhood. Heck, my whole hometown isn't the safest, and I knew a couple people at the party were involved in some stuff, so I don't know if that entered my mind or what, but I got immediate goosebumps. I said, "Let's go now." A couple of my friends looked at me weird, but later one told me they knew by the look on my face something was up. I apparently looked possessed. I had my keys, so we ran to my car and got in. I didn't even let anyone get their seatbelts on. I just hit the gas. Based on the news stories, less than probably 5 minutes later, a group of people shot up the house we were at. The others standing outside were severely injured or killed. Turns out a couple guys at the party were thought to have killed someone's family member, and it was a revenge thing. This was over 20 years ago, and I still get nervous if I'm standing around outside, especially if it's dark. I was in college when I had my first solo apartment. This guy across the hall would come over, or invite me over, and we'd hang out a few times. However, I would not call him a friend. One night, he asks me to loan him some money. In addition to not wanting to loan him money, I don't really have any, so he proceeds to ask for a ride to see his girlfriend because she has some money for him. I agree. We arrive at her apartment, and a small party is going on. When we walked into the party, everyone immediately shuts up and stares at us. He runs off to find his girlfriend, who I find out is his ex-girlfriend. It is awkward because I'm kind of this guy's friend by association, and I'm getting lots of angry stares. He gets into an argument with her, and we are basically thrown out of this place. He then asks if I can take him to another part of town. He owes another guy some money and needs to go talk to him. We proceed to an unfamiliar part of town, and he instructs me to park in a fairly isolated spot. He explains that he doesn't want the other guy to see my car, because he might take it. He owes this guy money for gambling or drugs or something else bad, and he is way behind on his payments. I left him and spent the rest of my time in that apartment avoiding him. Was in Mexico City with family including 2 daughters. Grabbed a cab on the street around 10 p.m. to take us back to the hotel. I was somewhat familiar with the area since we had been there 4 or 5 days already. Cabbie totally passes the hotel district and starts heading away from the part of town we were in. Streets were getting more and more residential. I demanded that he pull over, and we GTFO and walked back to the hotel, probably 3 or 4 miles. He was probably just padding the fare, but I was not going to take a chance on being kidnapped, so we flew. Sknyli of airshow catastrophe. I was 5-ish at a time, so it's my dad's story more than mine. You can Google the details, but long story short, my dad saw the plane jolt in the air, and he realized that something went wrong and started running and yelling at everyone else to run. I was sitting on his shoulders, so he just took off with me. The plane crashed into the crowd, killing 77 people, 35 or so children among them. Not us. I work as an engineer in a data center cooling plant. We're responsible for basically everything in the building: mechanical, electrical, HVAC, plumbing. So the engineer I'm relieving tells me there's an odd sound coming from the Con Ed vaults. This is where these huge transformers are that step down from 26,000 volts or so to a voltage the building can actually use. We are not allowed in those vaults, they're locked, and only Con Ed has the key. So he leaves, and I take a walk by the vaults. I had never actually heard electricity arcing through the air before, but I knew I was hearing it then. I called Con Ed's emergency line and told them to get out there ASAP. A crew of 2 guys show up. They seem calm and disinterested in the elevator on the way up. It's probably just a contact chattering, they said. We get off the elevator and start heading down the hall. The sound was way louder. Now we weren't even near the vaults, and there was no mistaking it. Both guys stopped dead in their tracks and kind of hunkered down. I saw the color drain from them. Wasted no time getting back in that elevator. If you've never seen video of a large transformer explosion, go check YouTube. These transformers are not like the ones you see up on utility poles. They're as big as a couple of trucks stacked on top of each other. Anyone on the floor, when one of them cooked off, would be gone, and we have 8 of them. There's a few for me, but a significant one. I was 10 years old, and my aunt had a small 100-acre farm that was also used as a livery yard for horses. I had a pony called Toffee. We often had kids come in our fields from the neighboring park. They would antagonize the livestock and horses, set dogs on the sheep, set fire to hay, and just generally cause stress and damage. We were told to stay away and ignore them and tell an adult if we saw them. The police often did nothing as the kids would escape onto the park, and the council refused for us to close off the public footpaths through the fields. It was a true misery. I went to catch my pony from the field and saw he was sweaty and wide-eyed. I don't think he understood for a moment that he was safe with me from this frightened look he gave me. I realized suddenly there were 6 people in the copse of our field. I was suddenly frightened and tried to encourage Toffee to come with me quickly. Initially the boys ran. I believe when they saw how small I was and that I was no threat, the group made way back towards me. The field was 5 acres, and this all occurred in one of the corners. 3 of them dropped their trousers and flashed at me. Keep in mind, I was a 10-year-old little girl who did not understand but had an idea what was implied. In a panic, I went to grab my pony, but he was scared of them and backed away. One of the boys shouted, "If you touch that horse, I'm going to rape you." Toffee, in that moment, charged briefly toward them. I don't know if it was fight not flight kicking in, or he sensed my terror, but it was enough to scatter the boys. I started to turn and bolt as fast as my legs could carry me toward the gate. One of the boys chased after me. I obviously screamed for my life and felt his hand briefly run over my hair before he fell over. I sprang the gate and ran down the drive to the barn where my aunt and mom were. I always wonder about if I had not run in that moment, or Toffee not charged at them, if I'd be alive. The field was far away from safety. My parents would leave me for hours alone at the farm. There was a forest and stream as well, so my small body could easily have been hidden. If any are curious, I still have Toffee about 13 years later. He's 27 and a very old grumpy pony. I'll keep him till he departs the world. He has given so much joy for the little he gave, and he might have saved me had he not taken off when he did. Edit. Pictures of Toffee. Answering some questions. This account was on my tablet. I hardly post or comment on Reddit, I just look. I did not expect to get any attention on this, but I do understand why people find it fake or suspicious. Thank you for watching. In the comments below the video, write your similar stories, and don't forget to check out our other videos. See you!